All right, everyone. This is really one of the most special podcasts that I've had, and our good friend Jake Thomas has agreed to come and talk to us about our mindset, our physical health, emotional health, and every aspect of our lives. Not just sort of what should you eat, but how we kind of put it all together. And I've got a little introduction. I'm just going to read for a moment because I know everyone wants to know a little bit about Jake Thomas, who is an Instagram influencer and online health and nutrition coach. He has several programs available online designed to rewrite their thought processes and understanding of the world as they see it and of life itself. Doing so produces autonomous beings who are principle based, purpose driven, able to harness the power of the universe to enact the change in their lives they so deeply desire. Jake, my friend, how you doing? And welcome. Thanks for being here.
I'm great. It's good to be here. Thank you for having me. I'm blushing. If you can't tell, I got some sun earlier, but I'm definitely blushing now from hearing the intro out loud.
Well, one, I'm inspired by what you put out there, and we all need some inspiration. And sick, scared, and stupid.
Yeah.
And I just kind of asked a little bit about what's new before we came on today. And, I think we want to sort of start with what's really important so we can dig deep into that and we can get on to other topics and highlight all of that. Maybe you could just kind of give us an introduction to that, and we'll get into more about you in particular also.
Sure. For the last few years, I've had people kind of pushing me, trying to get me to get on camera and on the mic, and kind of like what you're doing yourself, hosting my own channel or on my own podcast. And it's been in my mind. I just really wanted to do it in the right forum and feel confident about doing it and feel free to express my thoughts, honestly. And I finally kind of put it together. I've shot a few episodes already, and sure enough, it is called Sick, Scared, and Stupid, because that's what I believe we all are, that we all have been, that we've all been trained to be. And that so long as we subscribe to the modern world that we all, for the most part, live within, particularly in the West and most definitely in the United States, the majority of things that we consume, whether we look at it, we eat it, we ingest it, we smell it, we see it, we hear it, we're around it. The majority of things that we consume as a modern society are made, maybe not maliciously or innately or with premeditated thought, but they are made to, in fact, keep us sick, scared, and stupid. We just had a Super Bowl a few weeks ago, right? And I remember making a post the week before. I said, you want to radically improve your life in the next 30 days? We got a Super Bowl coming up. Do not consume anything advertised during this game. None of the drinks, none of the foods, none of the telecommunications, none of the media, nothing. Just totally turn it off, and your life will radically improve within 30 days. And it's true. And so if you think about the highlight or the hallmark of advertising and marketing in the country, arguably the world, because of that pinnacle event that the Super Bowl kind of is and the amount of viewership that it brings in. And yet here is what the message is. Here's what is being broadcasted. Here's what clearly is valuable to viewers because it's what people are paying for. And yet, what do those viewers look like? Well, I think you and I both know the statistics of what the modern American looks like, be it the elders, be it middle agers, be it the youth, be it the infants. The statistics are just abysmal in comparison to past, days past, years past. And for a nation, and again, a modern Western world with so much technology, so many advances in science, medicine, engineering, every other type of idea one could conceive, yet we as a physical health of a being have regressed so far in comparison to that. Is extremely perplexing if you don't believe the writing on the wall, so to speak. So that's kind of what my idea for Sick, Scared, and Stupid was all about.
So the Super Bowl and sports in general are attracting us to watch others that are participating in sports and life, right? And yet these large events are really bringing us there mostly for the eyes and ears on the products in the lifestyle, which brings alcohol, sodas, and eating foods that are not good for our physical, mental well-being.
Yep.
And maybe with this, you could tell us a little bit about how you got here in the first place and what your motivation is to do what you're doing. Or I mean, in a sense, how did you get here in a brief, because I know it's been spoken before, but I think that'll be helpful, and how we can sort of, we are sick. I know for myself, many illnesses through the years. I didn't realize it until my mid 40s, kind of that it might be related to a combination of what I put in my brain and what I ate.
Yeah.
And I didn't really kind of get to like, okay, I figured the food out. I was working on the mental part, but can you do one without the other? And that's kind of part of the story we're going to talk about.
Definitely. And I guess my background kind of wrote the story for me before I really understood what it meant, because I was born and raised in New Orleans. So, culturally, inundated culturally rather, was decadent, rich, highly palatable, processed, fried, smothered, and covered, and otherwise, very rich, homey Southern food. Put on top of that also the alcohol. I started drinking when I was 12. Was
Yeah.
definitely taking sips at a lesser age than that, but started regularly drinking, and it was acceptable in many ways. At 12, yeah, it was eighth grade, and or summer going into eighth grade, and that's just the culture I grew up in. That's the world I grew up in. And then my mother's also from Mexico, so culinary diversity was always prevalent in my world,
Yeah.
right? Whether it's sweets and richnesses of different flavors and foods, again mixed with alcohol, it was always something that was there. So to me, I didn't really grow up with it as thinking it was weird or taboo. To me, that was the way it was. But as life progressed and I started to travel more, meet people from outside of where I grew up, and going out with them and making fun of people for how they drank in comparison to the way that I did. Like, oh my God, you guys are lightweights, or y'all don't even drink yet. What's wrong with you? You're 20 years old. I've been drinking for 6 years already, blah, blah, blah. I thought it was funny at the time, but now come to think of it, it's like, no, people were just normally progressing into that phase of life, whereas you got a real fast, ramp up at a young age into it, kind of thing. I came from a background of medical practitioners, and my parents. My father practiced anesthesia for almost 37 years. My mother was a nurse, as well as taught nursing and masters in nursing. So I came from the traditional medicine way of thinking, in the form of low fat, moderate to high carbohydrates. Don't get too serious with the red meat. Abstain from that as much as you can. Leaner meats, white fish, et cetera, et cetera. My father had quadruple bypass, open heart at 37 years old.
Wow.
So I definitely was up there on the list of genetic predisposition for all the goodies with having to do with the heart. His father before him had heart disease. I had cancer on my mother's side of the family. So I had all kind of good reasons to not be healthy. And then add on to the fact that I'm, the bullets are loaded in the gun as far as in genetic predisposition. That's how I think of it. But we determine how that gun, if gets pulled or not, whether that trigger gets pulled and that weapon gets fired. So I was definitely aiding and adding some poundage to the trigger pressure of my own gun, so to speak. Was definitely told I had higher than normal blood pressure as a child, as an adolescent, and definitely in my teens throughout the military and once I got out. But still, it wasn't enough for me to be like, okay, maybe I should make a change on something. I just kind of saw it as a whatever. And I was invincible. I was young. I was able to still be in shape and do all kind of crazy, terrible things to my body, yet still maintain what I thought to be a decent amount of health. And it wasn't really till I got deep into drug abuse and having to go through a bunch of outpatients and just seeing outpatient programs and seeing what it was doing to myself, my family, and just the world around me, and that I wasn't really going anywhere, that I finally kind of started to put some things together and say, what's the sustainability here? Like, how far am I going to get if I keep doing this? And I remember it very vividly because my brother was in law school at the time, my younger brother, and he would always tell me about cool things he learned in school. And I was fascinated. He's my brother. I think it's cool. I look up to him. I'm proud of him. And he said, man, did you know in Louisiana, there's a mandatory 10-year sentence for possession of a CDS, or controlled dangerous substance. I didn't know this until he told me this. A CDS along with a firearm. So if you have a firearm and a CDS on you, mandatory 10 years before anything else. Mandatory. And I'm like, at this point in my life, I was always carrying anytime I was at home, always carried in New Orleans, always had a gun on me. And I pretty much always had a bag on me, or more than a bag.
Hmm.
for this was years. And so when he told me that, I was like, wow, all the drives that I had made driving under the influence of alcohol or narcotics, all those times that I had the gun on me, all the times where I either ran lights or had near accidents or just had evasive maneuvers to not hurt someone, like to think like the starting point had I gotten arrested would have been 10 years, let alone something worse happened. And you add on to that, well, now plus this, plus that, now we're looking at 15, like it's over, like to
Yeah.
me, like that it's over. And so that was the first big red flare for me to be like, dude, where's this taking you? And then, curiously enough, I finally kind of started listening to the whispers that my mother tried to put into my head as a kid, raising me well with whole, real food, even in New Orleans. Um, she never bought sodas for us. She never would permit us to eat garbage or junk. She was all about, a pick it, pull it, or kill it philosophy. That's how she was raised. That's how she tried her best to raise us. And I guess it was a combination of what my brother said and then trying to cling on to some of my mother's instillments that was this support that I fell back into of like, hey man, my family's trying to help me.
Hmm.
Maybe it should matter to you. And then as I started to lean into that a little bit, hey, I started to feel better. I started to be less depressed. I wasn't hanging around drug addicts and drug dealers anymore, or people are just lesser, I don't know, I don't want to say lesser value, but individuals that certainly weren't going to help me advance in life in the direction I was trying to go in. And the more that I did that, the more that I seemed to eat better, or at least prioritize my health and my things that I was putting into my body and not things I was not letting into my body. My health just became better and better and better, and finally led me to, years later, my thesis of saying the single most effective thing we can do as human beings in regards to our health is controlling what we put into our mouths.
Hmm. And how did that change, do you think, the mental attitude? Do you think there was a connection between the food and the mental aspect? Because, drinking and drugs certainly is really a brain disruptor. And then, we are a product of the people we hang out with.
Yeah,
And we hang out with our friends more than our family in a sense, although they're working to try to change us and make us better. Um, where do you think that sort of that part of it made the change? And I see you were in the Marines.
mhm. Uh,
Where does that come into this story a little bit?
I actually ran there for refuge. My my parents got divorced when I was a kid. I wasn't very happy with the situation. It was really weird. It was very toxic. It was very volatile. A lot of issues with custody and infidelity and just deceit and things that were very confusing as a child, and lacks of accountability from the parental units and different things that just made me really not want to be there. And so the Marine
Sure.
Corps actually looked like a place that was like, hey, I'd rather be there. So for somebody to think like, oh, it couldn't have been that bad. You were in white suburbia going to Catholic school, upper middle class family. How bad could it have been? I guess you just don't know. And
Yeah.
so I went there for solace of all things. But it was great because it's what I needed to. I needed the leadership. I needed the discipline. I needed the direction. I needed the focus, the singular focus of some type of a mission to be able to align myself to, and then the character to embody, to believe in the ethos of what it was to be a Marine, and
Yeah.
buying into everything that came with. That was a huge part of my life because it gave me an identity. It gave me, like I said, a purpose. Every day I had a mission that I knew what I was doing, to put on the camouflage and say, hey, I know what we're doing today. This is great. I wasn't confused or uncertain about who I was. But then when I left that place, I was very lost.
Mm.
The identity to me was gone. And now what am I supposed to do? Who am I if I am not that Marine? Like, how do I just be Jake again? This is weird. The world is different. People don't talk the same and I can't understand the same. Da 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 da. Da. So that's where I kind of went into the drugs heavily, drinking a lot more for sure. And it was, talking about the sum total of the five people you spend the most time with, the Jim Rohn, the quote, my people that I was spending time with, they were friends, and a lot of us were also just going through our own pains. It's not that we all ended up being losers, so to speak, but it's just, hey, we were all grieving in our own way. Now we each had our own different circles where, hey, this are definitely not the right people. We want to be going in the direction that they are. But I think a lot of it was just grieving in the best way we knew how at the time, unfortunately. Still, now into your question, yes, there's a correlation. There's a direct connection because that is the prescription, or that is the preferred method of healing that Big Brother is going to want you to take, because it's going to be, do this, be born in this place, go through this phase of life, serve, so to speak, get out, go to school, get a job, get retirement, have the pension, da 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 da, and then contribute back to the system to keep the wheel spinning. Well, all throughout that, it's going to be wake up with a hangover, use caffeine to mitigate the hangover, try to set yourself back to
Right.
neutral. Listen to news that's just thwarted and slandered in order to manipulate your psyche and your, belief and whatnot. Of course, these will be polarizing. Sorry. Go to a job that you absolutely despise, to which you're going to be sedentary, just dosed into insomnia or mopey minded of, not really understanding what you're doing, and having no real value or appreciation for your work. Maybe go to lunch. At lunch, you maybe have drinks. You do the same thing for the rest of the day. For your 8 hours, you punch out, hit the clock, you come home, maybe you have drinks on the way home. You eat some crap food that you picked up on wherever, or that your family thinks is good. You have more drinks there. You likely haven't eaten an actual piece of wholesomely cooked food that isn't otherwise not processed. And you didn't work out. You didn't get any type of movement. You didn't read anything. Your eyes have been glued to a screen all day. And now you're going to wake up tomorrow and do the same thing over again. Hungover. You're going to try to mitigate the hangover with a coffee. Da, 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 da. I was doing that every day. I was doing that for years. I was chasing something that was not fulfilling. I was trying to find work and employment that was gameful or otherwise worthwhile, that I had zero satisfaction doing. All the while I was consuming so much, drinking 8 nights a week, taking the substances, then trying to come down with the other substances, then trying to set myself back to, neutral with coffee or all the other over the counter things. And then the occasional prescription for blah, 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 blah. It's like, when does the body ever get a break to actually just do what it's born to do, what it's meant to do, and auto regulate and self heal and be this magnificently beautiful miracle of a being? I didn't know it at the time, right? Like, it's impossible to see all that, but kind of to juxtapose that, all those layers. How can that person then, how could you ever expect to even know what I was talking about? Or even believe it? That Jake then, and this is kind of to answer your question, like, there's no way I could even have gotten in there. My blood-brain barrier was so corrupted and convoluted and just destroyed that everything that was coming into it was being overly filtered, overly processed. And for the better part, my body was just on constant defense. It was always saying, no, 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 no. None of this can be good for us, because 99% of what's coming into us is not what we want.
So when was the life like Jake born to see the next evolution and helping one? I imagine either someone helped you get to where you're at, in the sense motivation, or many people, but where did that come from, and how did you make those changes, and how did you get to where you are today, and what are the aspects of healing that we can all learn from you?
It was right after I got out of rehab. I'd watched Train Spotting for the 100th time, and for anybody that's never seen that movie with Ewan McGregor, it's about heroin use in Scotland. And there's a great scene at the beginning of the movie where he's running from police and he's talking about choosing things. And he's like, don't do this, don't do this, don't choose heroin, choose whatever, choose love, choose laughter. And he says, choose life. And I love those shirts that George Michael used to wear that were famously made by Catherine Hamnett, fashion designer from the UK, that just said choose life, similar to the big font shirts that I'm wearing now. It's kind of what I pay my homage to for designing those. That's what it was about. It was about, dude, you can't do this. Like, this is not the road. This is the road to death. Like, you are still a child in your mind, and you feel that way. And I do. Like, I've always thought of myself as this lost boy that's never left Neverland and never wants to, never will. And it will always be smiling and curious and excited and energetic and playful and just cheerful and joyous. And that person was like dying. And when I finally came out of that IOP, it was like, it was just this eureka moment of watching Train Spotting and just being like, oh yeah, choose life. Cool. And then it was something else that I'd watched, and it was a memorial of somebody saying to live like this person. And I was like, life, choose life, life like Jay. I was like, oh, cool. That rhymes. That kind of goes on the tongue. And it's three common words. They're all 4 letters, and it's easy for SEO. And but I just like, yeah, cool, life like Jake. But it's really life like you. It's life like anyone. It's life like us. And for me, for the namesake, it just rhymes and it's my name, so cool. But
Yeah.
what does it mean? It means to choose life. Absolutely, 100% is what it means. It means to choose life, to prioritize yourself, to nourish your mind and your soul with physical and spiritual nutrition, and to not, it doesn't say to deny other things. Like, people would say, like, well, how, don't you miss this and da 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 da, and how do you tell yourself no? It's like, I'm not telling myself no ever. I'm telling myself 1,000 times more yes than you would imagine. Than someone that would, a naysayer maybe, would say that. But that's what life like Jake is. And that was 2017. And yeah, it's still, I'd like to say that it started then and I never looked back, but no, it's the work never stops.
Always looking forward. What are the first steps that one would take in order to get out of I wrote it down here. What is it? The sick, scared, and stupid phase of our lives, because we all get to the pain. We all know the pain of life.
Yeah.
And sometimes it takes the pain to make the change and and get to the gain of life. Can you tell us a little bit about those
Sure.
aspects? Because I know you, because I was reading a little bit on your website, which is awesome, about the principles.
Yep.
And because one of the things that taught me, I couldn't read as a kid and I hated to read. I was dyslexic and I was not in the highest part of the grades of class. I was in a gang, kicked out of school in LA, my father in jail. But it was that pain that somehow pushed me to see this ain't where I want to go. I've got to do something else. But we don't always, that we need the principles, and we need someone to lay the path and the seeds to help us get there.
Yep. First step, it doesn't matter whether someone comes to me for business coaching, relationship counseling, nutrition, leadership, whatever. 5 words. It starts with the diet. Doesn't matter. No, Jake, but I'm here to grow my business. What's your diet like? No, Jake, I'm trying to, my relationship. Tell me about your diet. No, I don't think you understand. I'm just trying to like better do this. Tell me about your diet. Because without that, or like as long as that's an obstacle, everything else is a moot point. If you cannot take a stance with that, there's no point for us to continue, because that is the thing of which you are in the absolute most direct control over: your physical health and the discipline, the conscious awareness of what you are doing in the form of putting something in your mouth or not. People can say, no, but like I'm the COO of my own company and it's my name on the wall and da 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 da, and it's my this and that, and my, me, ego, delusion, pride. Doesn't matter. Like, if it's your name on the company and this and that, and you are the executor, da, 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 you still don't have as much control over that as you do of this thing. Period. Full stop. And so for me, it's about helping people understand that, not telling them. It's not my philosophy or ideology. I rip this off from the rest of the world. I rip this off from, I think, our own just innate, just our instincts. I think this is instinctual for what I'm trying to impress upon people, as opposed to, it's not like it's not novel. I certainly don't take credit for it. And I'd like to say I don't teach people anything. I just help you remember stuff that you already know, or that's been kind of just lost in translation. But for sure, regardless of what the issue might be, whatever you're coming to me for, it's always going to start with a diet. So, spoiler alert to anybody, if you think you're going to come and like get around that, like, I'll just tell you to piss off, because I don't, it's not going to happen. It's the same thing with people, whether it's the needle, the bottle, the bag, the gambling, the sex, whatever the vice, the addiction, the spending, the shopping. It's going to start with the diet. But at the same time, once you come into the world or the program to try, that stuff stops too. So you can come with the spike in your vein. You can come with blood on your face, on your hands, whatever, money dropping out of your pockets, powder on your nose. But the second you start, that will stop and the diet will kick in. Because I'm not going to fight that battle too. I'm not going to fight those battles if you're willing to not be able to fight with me.
Do you have any particular direction you like to talk about on the dietary side and how to help people learn a different approach that I think we've all been led to believe one thing, but maybe something is completely different?
Sure. If someone were to ask me, what do I think is the best, most efficient, most effective, most optimal way to unlocking the mind dietarily, I would say it's going to be a strict carnivore diet. That's one answer. But if someone came to me that's just absolutely all over the place and just needs to get grounded in some sense, I'd be like, all right, listen, let me lay this out for you. 3 ways of eating that I would say I think are the ways a human being should eat. Number 1 would be an animal-based diet. So I use 3 concentric circles. The largest, the most all-encompassing, I would call it an animal-based diet, right? Where the majority of your calories, the denominator, are going to come from animals or animal byproducts. So if you're on a 2,000 calorie diet, 1,001 of those calories are going to come from animals or animal byproducts, your denominator. The numerator can be whatever you want. Now, I would not say to be whatever you want. I would personally prioritize things you can pick and pull. So back to that kind of homage to my mother. If you can pick it, pull it, or kill it, I think it's a great place to start. Things that are only what you can pick, pull, or kill to consume, with the majority of those being of an animal. Well, Jake, what about bread that's made of pick and pull? What about chocolate? No, not all breads are made the same. Not all chocolates are made the same. And once we start going through the processing of these things, you understand the dilutions and adulterants that can take place. And back to the drugs reference. If I were to subscribe to a steady habit of cocaine again, I would not want something of very low purity. I want the freaking jungle lab paste fresh out of Bolivia, like 100% pasta, right? La pasta. Like, give me that. That's also, $100 a key instead of 35,000. But by the time that stuff got up to me in Manhattan, it's got to go, from Bolivia into Colombia, through the canal, up the coast, into Mexico, through Mexico, and then divided into the United States and run all the way up 95 to New York. How many times did that get stepped on, diluted, cut down? The purity is less and less and lessened. By the time it gets to me, it's probably like less than 30%. And I'm like, oh, this is great stuff. Our food is the same thing. So for someone who's just trying to get a foothold on their health, pick it, pull it, or kill it. Don't go beyond that. Don't nickel and dime. Well, this is made of, no. Just pick and pull it, kill. Whole, truly unprocessed foods, the majority of those calories being from an animal or an animal byproduct. So that would be my largest outer ring, the animal-based. Inside of that, I would say, is a carnivore diet, a strict carnivore diet. Now, people define this differently, and often, much to their dismay, the way I explain it, because many people go, well, what about coffee? Does that count as a carnivore diet? I'm like, does coffee breathe or walk on 4 legs or swim or crawl or fly? Well, no. I was like, well, there's your answer, right? So many people are like, well, I kind of do the carnivore diet with coffee. I'm like, well, personally, I would call that an animal-based diet, but, to each their own. But nonetheless, to me, a carnivore diet, strict animals and animal byproducts only. Of those animal byproducts, I would be very wary of the ones that I would consume, as far as in particularly the dairies. I would prioritize raw dairy only, hence why make milk raw.
Raw. What's that say? Make milk
raw again.
Raw again. I love it. Make it legal.
Make it legal. Gosh.
Come on.
It's crazy. So the bootlegging operation of raw milk in the US is a blast. I have a lot of fun doing it. It's really cool. But that's a side note. But yeah, I would tell people to be very wary of the animal byproducts part. I would prioritize just whole animal foods and definitely get your organ meats in there for multivitamin purpose and extreme nutrient density that they provide. And then if you want to get real tight, I would go to a lion diet. So just your ruminant, red meat animals and salt and water, and that's it. And for anybody that's listening to that and they think that's crazy, that's extreme. Well, I think it's crazy and extreme to take a pharmacy worth of pills every day, or tinctures, or droppers, or powders, or anything else, and then to continue pouring liquors and other substances down your throat and up your nose and in your arms. That's spending way more money on that than I would have ever spent on food. But nonetheless, those are my three things. Three diets, I would say, are the ways in which you will unlock the mind. That's how you can cure depression. That's how you can get rid of anxiety. It's how you can cure, obviously, every freaking imaginable autoimmune issue, pretty much. Reduce your blood pressure, improve all your lipid panels, all the good stuff that you know way more than I do, way more about than I do. But nonetheless, to follow that up, that's where it all started for me too. That's where the enlightenment phase really began, when I started to clean up my diet and dial my way in from this outer ring into this inner ring. And the further I went into that inner ring, the more I found, the more I unlocked. And again, back to the thing that I said before, it's not the diet that's doing that. It's the body that's coming alive. These diets are vessels of servitude to allow our bodies to be these what we say are superhuman beings, but they're not. That's what human being is. We're not trying to be superhuman. We're not trying to be better than the average man. It's just that the average human is so far behind, and it's such a deficit that what we are doing, what you are advocating for, what we believe in, people think is extreme and super. And it's like, no, this is the standard. Everything else that we think is normal is subpar.
Dr. Rob Kiltz, another beautiful, spectacular day. And I just want to send thanks to all those for watching the newest episode of Carnivore Conversations. Be sure to follow us on Spotify, Apple Music, and other streaming platforms to gain access to the full 1 hour episode. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more to come. God bless.